Hello, it's Michelle Carville here, and it's 3 o'clock and it's book chat on Tuesday the 27th. So welcome, my name is Michelle Carville and I am the founder of Carville Creative and the curator here in Social Souls. So I think there was a few people coming on this afternoon to talk to us about this brilliant book, Resonate, by Nancy Duarte. I think that's how you pronounce her name. So I hope you're all well. It's beautiful and sunny now, thank goodness, and spring definitely seems to be here. Hey Shelley, nice to see you. Hopefully I'm on the right channel now and I am on Social Souls, so good to see you. Thanks for being here. I hope you're having a good day. So so book chat today. We're going to talk about this brilliant book, Resonate. I've actually covered the front page in sticky notes to make sure that I don't miss telling you any of these gems. But I suppose how I came about this book was, I think it was actually Vincent, Vinny, who came on one of our live at 11s, was talking about this book in his group, the Content Blueprint, about when he was planning for some talks. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I've got a couple of talks coming up. You know, I can't tell you how many presentations I've done over the years and how many slides, training courses I've created and various other bits and pieces. Hey, Malcolm, nice to see you. And I've never ever really used any resource. I've never really been trained in how to put slides together. And I suppose I've always just thought about it as a bit of a story, having a start, a middle and an end. You know, so I've always kind of considered that aspect to it. But I've never really been on any courses about or really looked into any training about how to put a presentation together. So I don't know if you guys have, and hey Elizabeth, nice to see you. And if you have, then maybe share your resources. So I've never done any of that, and because I am now, obviously I've got my new book coming out in May, and I'm doing a talk, and I've done a couple of talks already, and I'm doing a talk this Thursday to a group, a roundtable, a CEO roundtable, and I thought, you know, I really want to make sure that it's not just that I'm delivering the content, that I'm actually making an impact. And when I looked at Nancy's book, this book, hey Grant, nice to see you. When I looked at Nancy's book, Resonate, that's what it talks about. It talks about communicating so that you, hi Anne, so that you shift people from where they are now to where you want them to be. And that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? So it's not about having a sales pitch. It's about having real resonance with how you communicate. So I picked up the book. I ordered the book. It's quite a big, chunky book. You know, I think it was about £25 as well. You know, and you can see here that there, you know, it's beautifully laid out, and there's lots of wonderful examples of content, of stories and of structure. So I thought what I would do is just share with you some of the key points, the key takeaways in, I mean, I read this book in kind of 2 days and made ridiculous amounts of notes all over the place. And I'd actually started my presentation for the talk on Thursday, and having read this, I actually kind of just scrapped the whole lot and started again. That's how impactful this was for me. So so I suppose, where shall we start? So let's start with some practical stuff. Okay, so let's start with some practical stuff, because practical always helps. And we've got, you know, another 25 minutes together, so I'll go through it, and then maybe if you've got questions, I can share you what I've learned from Nancy, and maybe, you know, and encourage you to have a look at it yourself. So the first thing I've got here is know your audience. Okay, so yeah, I suppose I would normally always take some time to understand who I'm presenting to, and that is a good thing to know, you know, knowing who your audience is. But she talks about, you know about your audience, really understand their pain points, what's keeping them up at night, not just who they are and their demographics, you know, thinking of them as human beings. And there's a beautiful saying actually that was in her book, and it's not her, it's from Dale Carnegie, you know, the guy who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think this is a really great quote for us all to kind of think about when we are thinking about who our audience is. So when dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion. Don't just remember it, know it. Now that for me, when she talks about, you know, and that was one of the kind of opening pieces, and what Nancy talks about is getting to know your audience emotionally, you know, what makes them tick, what makes them concerned, what makes them happy, what makes them worried, you know, where are they in their life. And realistically, when I was initially, you know, putting my presentation together, I was thinking, well, hang on a minute, this is CEO's roundtable. I don't want to come across as, you know, wishy-washy or, you know, trying to be too kind of emotional. You know, this is about giving them some practical tips and advice. But then I kind of caught myself and I thought, actually, no, you know, the whole reason you wrote Get Social was because there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of overwhelm out there. There's a lot of confusion out there. And, you know, my why for writing Get Social was all about helping people to overcome that, helping leaders not to feel like idiots, you know, because they don't know everything that's going on with digital and social, because why would they have to, you know, ordinarily, but that they know enough and that they can do what they need to do on their terms. So that really resonated with me about, you know, remembering that you are knowing your audience, but remembering the emotional aspect of the fact that you are talking to people, and that your position, you know, another really important thing is your role when you are presenting. And it could be that you're just presenting, you know, you're presenting to your own team, you're presenting, you know, a new product launch as part of you know, your role. But whatever it is that you're doing, it's about trying to get to a place where you talk about them as to, so where are we now? What is the situation? And what could it be? You know, and she gives lots of examples of that. So, you know, from a kind of forecast, right now we're not making as much money as we need to, and this is how we could, and this is what that could be. Or it could be, you know, a more inspirational, changing the world. You know, Martin Luther King, she talks about him, you know, his dream that this is where we are right now, but this is the future, this is where we could get to. You know, and that was a really interesting positioning of, you know, what is it now and where is it that you want them to be, and that is the journey that you're taking them through. So this journey, you know, she recalls the hero's journey, and I've heard about the hero's journey, and I knew there was a process. I never really thought about applying the hero's journey to, you know, it's a film. You know, in films there's always the hero's journey. In books there's often the hero's journey, and the hero's journey is that, you know, you as the presenter are not the hero. Your audience are the heroes. You're the kind of mentor that is helping the hero to get to where they need to get to. So, you know, the analogy she uses is if it was Star Wars, then, you know, or let's say the Karate Kid, you know, in Karate Kid, the hero is the boy, you know, but the audience, but the mentor is Mr. Miyagi, and so it's that's your role. Your role is is mentoring, educating, influencing the hero so that they go from where they are right now to where they could get to. So that really kind of shifted things for me, and hence why I had to kind of scrap what I was doing and go back to the drawing board. So so, you know, she talks about the mentor's teaching, and she talks about, you know, the mentor's gift giving, and that you are there to persuade, to entertain, and to inform, but, you know, you're not the hero. So another interesting thing is that, you know, the introduction to who you are, you need to say enough to know that so that they're comfortable that you're credible, but you really don't need to go on and on about yourself. You know, oh, I am this, I have done this is me, this is what I've done, I've hit these numbers, I've helped this many people, I've done it. So what? You know, you're not the hero, you're the mentor. So what you're bringing to the party is that kind of advice as to what they can do to help them on their journey, and you taking them from A to wherever you want to get them. So that again was an important point. And that introduction, yeah, sure, you do need to introduce yourself, and you do need to make sure that you are showcasing what you do and some credibility, but always with the audience in mind. So if you're just blasting out about, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, and let's face it, we've all been on presentations where it's like that, you know, for too long, probably, then it's just time to rein that back and to really think about what is your purpose for this presentation. Your purpose is to help the hero on their journey, taking them from where they are right now to where you want them to be. So when you really think and position it like that, that really starts to shift the way you communicate. So, you know, she talks about this kind of there being, so, you know, there's the audience, there's lovely diagrams in here. This is the audience journey. She talks, and you'll see these spark lines that happen. And I'll try and show you them there, that they kind of go up and down. Can you see? It's like almost like musical bars, up and down, up and down, up and down. And, you know, this is kind of about the contrast. You know, this is where it is and this is where we want to get to. This is positive and this is negative, and it's always about having this kind of light and shade throughout the presentation, so that you are constantly pulling people, keeping their attention, you know, as to how things are. So to give you an example of that, you know, she talks about, there's a great examples all throughout this book about people's with their, you know, understanding who they are. But let's just go about the journey. Yeah, she talks about the journey and that there being wind resistance. So when you set off sailing, you know, there is kind of like, oh, that's where we want to go, and that's where I'm going to point the sails, and that's the way we're going to go. But there's always wind resistance. There's always resistance. There's always, the audience are always going to have their kind of skepticism, or their, you know, their disbeliefs, or their own beliefs about things. And what she talks about, which again was something that I really kind of took away from this, is to mitigate that, to actually almost acknowledge that resistance. So you know that there's going to be resistance. You know that, for example, maybe there's a risk aspect. So if I'm talking to CEOs about social media, for me, you know, they're thinking about, oh, what about my reputation? What about my fear? What about my credibility? You know, there's a big risk here. So for me, I've addressed those things throughout. So yeah, I'll talk about those things as very real things, but then before they've even been able to think about, oh yeah, but she hasn't covered that, you know, that's my reputation on the line, that's this, that's that, you make sure that you're countering that resistance. So there will always be a resistance, and there will always be this kind of flow. And what you want to do is put your point across and make sure that you are kind of backing it up and providing that almost second guessing what they're going to be thinking, and making sure that you're coming in with those aspects into the presentation. And that starts to build more likability, more trust as they go through, because they're going to judge you. They're going to judge you as soon as you get onto the stage, as soon as you stand up in front of people. They're going to have their preconceptions, and those preconceptions will be based on, the bio that they've been presented with. They may have looked you up on social media, they may have spoken to somebody else, there might be some introductory information, and so all of that is building a picture. So when you get in front of them, they've got their biases, they've got their beliefs, they've got their resistance to what it is you're going to say before you've even opened your mouth. So the fact that you've got to get them to kind of know you, like you, trust you, and quickly, is by, yes, the credibility piece, not too much, but that you are there as the mentor, and they are the hero. So as soon as you start positioning that into the content, that this is all about them, this is all about what you're bringing to them and why it's for them and how it matters to them, and if they've got concerns, don't worry about those concerns because I've just addressed those concerns for you. It's that flow of that continuous storyline that goes through. So another thing that I thought was really great, and it's something again that the reason I kind of changed, she talks about, the role of the job, the role of the mentor is about awakening the possibility in others. So I really like that. I think that for me, that is exactly, and how are you going to do that? How are you going to awaken the possibility in others? So in your audience, in these heroes, how are you going to make them believe? How are you going to awaken that possibility? And that's your role as the mentor to kind of get that across. And again, that really resonated with me, and as I say, changed the way I've done that. And the other thing that it's got here that I changed is, it says that the audience, so if you've got your idea, so the big idea, okay, now I have a big idea, and that big idea was, one of the reasons I wrote my book, and but do you know what? When I mapped out the presentation initially, I didn't even have that big idea in the presentation. All I did with the presentation was kind of put all the facts, some stats, some questions, a bit of engagement stuff, and then a round off, and now when I look back at that presentation, it looks so different to how this new one does, with this really keeping the hero in mind, and the hero being the audience. And she talks about, the big idea. So communicating the big idea. The big idea must articulate your unique point of view. It must convey what's at stake, and it must be a complete sentence. So my big idea, it's not quite crystallized, but my big idea is that my belief is that by being active on social media, you can become a better leader. Okay, now some people in my audience are going to believe that, and I'm going to say who's already with me, and maybe one or two who are social will think, yeah, there are some real merits to it, and will believe that. There are others that are going to be like, what is she talking about? And that is my big idea. That is my big idea. I'm going to shift them from where they are now, I'm not believing that, to actually believing that that is a credible thing by the end of my presentation. So already my work is very clear. By starting with the big idea, it's very clear what I want my presentation to do, and therefore what I need to include throughout that journey. So you know, that big idea is a really important thing to crack, and I have to say personally that big idea, I started off with something else. I started off first of all thinking about, oh, it's technology has shifted, you know, everything has changed yet nothing has changed, you know, that's my big, it's not really my big idea. You know, what's my big idea, what's my mission, what am I doing here with this, and what do I want to achieve? Well, I want, you know, I truly believe, knowing what I know, having researched what I've researched, having spoken to who I've spoken to, having interviewed all the CEOs that I've interviewed, having seen the stats and the facts and talked to professors and done all of that, I know that to be true, that social media, being active on social media can make you a better leader. Now, they may not necessarily know how or how to do that, or at that point why, but that's my belief and that's my big idea. So that's what I'm taking, and that has driven the presentation. So I can't tell you enough about getting to the big idea, and it may take you a bit of time to get to the big idea, but once you nail that big idea, everything else just flows, because it's kind of like, well, that's my idea, that's what I believe in. Now it's just a case of communicating the why and the how and what that means to them as the hero. So it's a really brilliant kind of, you know, if there's one thing you take away, get to know the big idea. So the other thing that she said, you know, yeah, the audience should leave each presentation knowing something they didn't know before, and with the ability to apply that knowledge to succeed. So that's another fundamental thing. So you don't want to just talk at them about you know, what it is and how it could be, you know, where they are now and how it could be. You want to actually give them believable and practical things that they can do, so they really feel like, well, I could do that, you know, I could do 2 things, I could do 3 things. You don't want to overwhelm them and make them feel that, you know, this is all too much, and so they don't do anything, but you want to give them enough so that there is some practical engagement. And, you know, Nancy talks about, you know, your view is that the audience have given me their precious time, a slice of their lives. I need to make them feel that it was time well spent. And again, you know, who positions it that way? You know, you don't. You go, or I did, you know, until I read this book and started changing and shifting my thinking. I would not have thought like, oh, they've given me their precious time. I would definitely have been thinking, well, I've given you my precious time and all my insights, and why aren't you absolutely compelled to go off now and running out the door to take action? You know, that would have been my thinking. Whereas actually the repositioning it, that I'm the mentor, they're the hero, and my role is to help them get to where they need to get to. Yeah, then they've given me their time, they've listened to me, they've allowed my thoughts and views to be heard, and, you know, I need to make them feel that this is time well spent. So again, it's that real shift. It's a real shift, and I can see how that resonates with an audience, because you know, you can only think about yourself when you go to presentations that have really moved you. And I don't mean moved emotionally so that we're all in tears, you know, like, you know, many TED Talks kind of move me to tears, but, you know, as I'm sure they do with many others. But they have been developed to do that. But I mean, when they move you and they move you to take action, they compel you, they get inside, and it's like, you know what? Yeah, I can do that, and I'm going to do that, or I'm going to do that 1 thing, or that 2 things, or 3 things. So that is a really big, I think a really big deal. The journey needs to be mapped out, and all content propelling them closer to the destination. And that is exactly it, isn't it? It's all mapped out, and that is your role. You're propelling them towards that destination. She also talks about, you know, these kind of, you know, that they're the hero. It's all about their message. Liking your audience members is the first step in being genuine with them. Study them. What would a walk in their shoes be like? What keeps them up at night? What are they called to do that will make a difference on this earth? Imagine their lives by the day, the hour, and the minute. remember, because they are human, their lives are messy. They might have a sick child at home, might not have slept well on the hotel pillow, might not be making ends meet financially, or might just not feel on top of their game. Look for insights into how your idea will alleviate pressure on them if they take action. So, you know, it's about going back to that human aspect and creating some common ground as well, you know, that you're a human being too. You're not this super being, you know, you're the mentor, they're the hero, and that there is this common ground, that you get where they are, that you understand it, there's real empathy, you know, that you've been in their shoes, you get this is tough, you know, there is challenge, there is overwhelm, there is whatever it is that you showcase that common ground and that empathy, rather than stand up there like the expert and say, well, I've done it all and here's my research and this is what it says. It's not what people are interested in. You know, they relate to people that they relate to, that have maybe been there and done it, or talk to people that have been there and done it, and that's finding that common ground is the real connection. So so she talks about many things, and you know, this creating emotional contrast, contrasting the delivery of things, the different types of relationships. She talks about, you know, how to kind of go through the process. So nailing that big idea. And one of the things, I mean, it's a similar way that I've always kind of mapped out my content, whether it's for books or, you know, my content or planning. I get my packs of Post-it notes, as you can see, and I map them, you know, all over the wall there. You can just, you know, you can see they're all over my wall, my mapping of that journey, and I map them. And I, you know, and I then just get the ideas down, and that's what she talks about as well. You know, so it's good to know I'm in good company. She talks about, you know, getting your stories down in any way that you want, with no structure initially. It's just, you know, write things down, ideas, boom, 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 boom. Get them up on a wall, get them up on a board, and then once you've got your ideas down, actually then start to create some clusters, yeah? And then you can start to cluster them, and things will naturally start to group in around, well, is that the beginning? Is that the middle? Is that the end? Is that about risk? Is that about stats? Is that about data? Is that about the shift? Is that about practical doing stuff? You know, and you can just start to move things into clusters, and then from those clusters you can actually start to create, you can actually get rid of quite a bit as well. You know, you can actually start to think, well, I don't need that, that's too much, you know, that's irrelevant, that crosses over, and so, you know, start with a lot, get it all out there, start to create clusters, and then start to create structure. And then from that structure, it might be that there's still some weeding out to be doing. The other thing that I found really encouraging from Nancy's book is that, you know, the book is called Present Visual Stories That Transform Audiences, you know, resonate. So that's really the key message. And the other thing that I really was quite comforted by was the amount of slides. Now, she said she was doing an hour's presentation, and for certain presentations she will have 140 slides, okay, in an hour's presentation. She might have, I think she had 148 slides. Now, the difference is that those slides are not a slide with 20 things on that slide. It might just have one thing. And she was saying that her research, and from all of her journey and advice and her training and her teachings around what really lands with people and what resonates with people, is that, you know, an audience has the capacity to kind of stay alert for 2 minutes. Now, not 2 minutes of the whole thing, but every time we change a slide, then it kind of reprograms them to, oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? You know, I'll wake up again and I'll take that. I'll absorb now what this next bit is about. So, of course, the more you are moving things, you know, not too quickly so you're going to make people ill, but the more you are pacey with your slides, if that's relevant, for you, it actually creates more engagement with the audience. Now, whenever I've done talks, you know, I tend to like a lot of slides because I don't like slides with loads of things on. So lots of my slides just have a picture or one thing. And very often it's not necessarily about the fact that I need those slides as my cue. It's that the point I'm making, if I want the audience to retain it, is going to be helped by that visual. And maybe it's because I'm a visual learner that I like to do the visual along with my conversation. So so that was quite interesting, that actually doesn't matter how many slides, if your audience are engaged, if your message is clear, if you are taking them from where they are now to where you want them to get to, if you are giving them something along the way, if you are making them the hero and you're taking them on the hero's journey and being their mentor, doesn't matter how many slides. Really doesn't matter how many slides. What does matter is not having loads of stuff on slides so that you overcomplicate the message and it's just too bamboozling. Clarity, simplicity and fluidity really help with engagement. Now for me, I love that, you know, I love that because it kind of made me go, huh, okay, because that's how I like to do things. And I've always felt a bit, you know, restrained by thinking, oh, I better only keep it to 20 slides, otherwise people start to panic, you know. But actually it's quite nice to move people through. It's quite nice to have something different to kind of hook into for everybody. And of course, you know, if they're going to get the slides and they want to scribble things on them, then their messages, they can do that cohesively. So I really liked that aspect. So I suppose the last thing I'll change here is, you know, you want to create a star performance. And I really like this anagram, star, something they'll always remember. And again, how wonderful is that, you know, this star performance, and something they'll always remember. And she talks about using props for that. I think I'm actually going to take my Wonder Woman, that she says something about making change in here. So I'm thinking about what prop could I do so people think, oh my God, yeah, that was you know, she started off with Wonder Woman. But I'm not sure. Kind of, I'm tying it into the hero thing, but and my learning from that as well. But I'm not yet sure. But she talks about you know, Bill Gates when he did his talk and he opened about malaria. It was to do with malaria and his cause, and he, you know, he let go a whole jar of mosquitoes into the room, and people were like, oh my God, you know, what has he done? But you know, they remembered it. And Steve Jobs, when he was talking about the new Air book, and he pulled it out of this tiny thin envelope, you know, and everybody was like, oh my God, you know, these memorable things. I'm not quite sure, you know, what, you know, whether it needs to be a prop or a thing, but even if it's just something that you do or you say, you want to be thinking about that star performance, something they'll always remember, so that you're not just another presentation, you know, that wasn't just another set of slides, a set of deck, you know, there you go, thanks very much. Oh, I took one or two nice gems away from that. You really want to think about something that they'll always remember. And, you know, that's something for us all to work with and aspire to. So, you know, I don't know if I've got that nailed for Thursday, but it's definitely in my mind, and it's definitely making me think more creatively about what it is I'm doing and my message. And, you know, if your message is important, and if if you've got time, and again, going back to that fact that your audience has given you that time. Time is our most precious resource. If people have given us that time, of that slice of life, you know, then we want to make sure that it was time well spent. We want to give them something that they'll remember, and we want to help that hero be the hero and go from where they are right now in their thinking or their beliefs or their behaviors to where, you know, is a great place for them to go, but they don't know it yet, you know, and your job as the mentor is to get them there. So, you know, for me, it's a really fantastic book. It's Resonate. It's by Nancy Duarte. It is money well spent. If you're doing presentations, if you're writing, if you have got stories to share and messages to get across, then this absolutely, you know, is a really fantastic read. And it's both inspirational and it's practical and it's challenging. You know, it really challenges it challenged my conventional thinking. Like I say, I've started again. I've scrapped what I'd had down before, and it's completely made me go back to the drawing board and rethink. And I'm so glad I have. So it'll be really interesting to see how Thursday goes down, you know, because I delivered the other presentation a few weeks ago, and I was going to deliver a similar presentation, and so it'll be different to see the contrast. It'll be different to see what happens. A slightly different audience tomorrow, on Thursday, but it will be interesting to see. So that is my book chat for today, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. And if you didn't get to join me today, a few of you are here. So hi Grant, hi Malcolm, thank you. Hi Shelley, hi Elizabeth, Grant, Anne, Raymond. Wonderful to have you on the live, and thanks for joining in. I hope you're as inspired and moved by this book as I was. And it's a really good book, a really good book, and I highly recommend it. If you've got stuff to do, then in that space, and presenting visual stories is something that you need to do as part of your work, then I can't believe I've never come across this book in the past, given how many presentations I've put together. But it's never too late, and I'm really glad that I've found it now. So if you've got resources as well, if you've got books that you think, oh yeah, I've read a great book about that and that's similar, share it, because I'm in open mode for things like that. And if you've got any questions about presenting, presentations, anything like that, then let me know, because you know I'm on a couple of speaker groups, and there are some fantastic people in there who are communication experts and presentation experts. So again, if that's something that we feel that we want to talk about on Social Souls, that's something we could get on board for our Q&A lives. I'm in the process of putting together our next schedule for our Q&A lives, so I'll be, and there's already some really nice, exciting people that are going to be coming on board to share their knowledge with us. So that's all great. So thanks for joining in. Thanks for being part of Book Chat. I may change the date of Book Chat for next week because it's Easter, and so it's half term, and I will be a little bit more all over the place than I normally am. But I'm wishing you all a great Wednesday, and thanks for tuning in, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye for now.